Story 1, The Hitchhiker. I still remember that road trip with Emily. We were driving through the back roads of Nevada, trying to avoid the monotony of the interstate. The open road was supposed to be an adventure, but it turned into something I'll never forget. We had been on the road for hours, the desert landscape stretching out endlessly. As night fell, the sky turned a deep, inky black, and a storm began to brew. The wind picked up, making the car shake, and soon rain started pouring down, making it hard to see anything. "Maybe we should have taken the interstate," Emily said, looking nervously at the dark clouds. "Nah, this way is faster," I replied, though I was beginning to regret it. The storm was getting worse, and I could barely see the road ahead. That's when we saw him. A lone figure standing by the side of the road, drenched and shivering with his thumb out. I hesitated but pulled over. We couldn't just leave him out there. "Are you sure about this?" Emily asked, her voice trembling. "We can't leave him here," I said, more to convince myself. The man approached the car, and I rolled down the window. "Need a ride?" I asked. He nodded, and without a word, he got in the back seat. The interior light revealed a gaunt face, eyes that seemed to pierce through us. He was soaked, water dripping onto the floor. "Where you headed?" I asked, trying to sound friendly. "Anywhere but here," he replied, his voice low and rough. Emily shivered, and I felt a chill run down my spine. There was something off about him. We drove in silence for a while, the rain pounding on the roof. Emily tried to make small talk, but the hitchhiker's answers were short and curt. There was a tension in the car that I couldn't shake. As we drove further, I started to feel uneasy. The man's presence was unsettling, and his silence was oppressive. I glanced at him in the rearview mirror, and our eyes met. His gaze was cold, almost lifeless. "What's your name?" Emily asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Doesn't matter," he replied. "Just need to get away." From what I asked, immediately regretting it. "From them," he said, looking out the window. "They're coming." "Who's coming?" Emily asked, but he didn't answer. Instead, he pulled his hood down further and slumped in his seat. We continued driving, the storm raging outside. I felt like we were being watched, and every now and then I thought I saw shadows moving along the roadside. Emily held my hand tightly, her fear mirroring my own. After what felt like hours, we reached a small, rundown gas station. I needed a break, so I pulled in and parked. The hitchhiker didn't move. "I need to use the bathroom," I said, needing an excuse to get out of the car. Emily nodded, understanding. Inside the gas station, I asked the attendant about the weather and bought some coffee. When I got back to the car, the hitchhiker was gone. Emily looked just as confused as I was. "Where'd he go?" I asked. "I don't know. He just got out and walked away," she said, her voice shaking. We looked around, but he was nowhere to be seen. I felt a sense of relief mixed with lingering fear. We decided to keep driving, wanting to put as much distance between us and the hitchhiker as possible. As we pulled back onto the road, Emily turned to me. "Do you think he was running from something?" "I don't know," I replied, glancing in the rearview mirror, "but I'm glad he's gone." The rest of the trip was uneventful, but the memory of that night stayed with us. We never talked about it much, but every time we passed a hitchhiker, we both felt a shiver run down our spines. I still wonder who or what he was running from. Maybe it's better we never found out. Story 2, The Abandoned Motel. It was supposed to be a fun road trip, just me and my buddy Chris. We were heading to a music festival out in the middle of nowhere. The drive was long, and as night fell, we decided to find a place to crash. That's when we saw the sign for an old motel off the highway. "Looks like a decent spot to spend the night," Chris said, pointing to the flickering neon sign that read motel. We pulled in, and the place looked like it hadn't seen guests in years. The parking lot was empty, and the building was run down. But we were tired and didn't want to keep driving in the dark. "Let's just check it out," I said, hoping for a decent bed to sleep in. Inside, the lobby was dimly lit and smelled musty. An old man sat behind the desk, staring at a small TV. "Need a room for the night," Chris said. The old man barely looked up. $40, cash only, he grunted. We handed over the money and got a key to room 12. The room was just as run down as the lobby, peeling wallpaper, a stained carpet, and a bed that looked like it had seen better days. But we were too tired to care. As we settled in, I noticed something weird. The mirror on the wall was positioned in a way that it reflected the bed directly. I tried to move it, but it was bolted to the wall. "That's creepy," I said, pointing it out to Chris. "Just ignore it." "We're only here for the night," he replied, already half asleep. I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling, though. I lay down, staring at the mirror. It felt like someone was watching us. I turned off the light and tried to sleep, but every sound made me jump. Around midnight, I heard a faint tapping sound coming from the bathroom. I nudged Chris, but he was out cold. I got up and walked to the bathroom, the tapping getting louder. I turned on the light, and my heart nearly stopped. There was a small hole in the wall, and through it, I could see an eye staring back at me. I stumbled back, horrified. I ran to wake Chris, but he was gone. The bed was empty, the sheets cold. "Chris," I shouted, panic setting in. There was no answer. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight, scanning the room. The door was still locked from the inside. Where could he have gone? I heard a faint noise coming from the closet. My heart pounded as I approached it. Slowly, I opened the door. Chris was there, tied up and gagged, his eyes wide with fear. I quickly untied him. "What the hell happened?" "Someone grabbed me," he gasped. "Dragged me in here." We didn't waste any time. We grabbed our stuff and ran out of the room. In the lobby, the old man was gone. We bolted for the car, not looking back. As we sped away, Chris told me what happened. He had woken up to someone standing over him, a knife in hand. They dragged him to the closet and tied him up before disappearing. We didn't stop driving until we reached the next town. We found a new motel and called the police. They went to check out the old motel, but when they got there, it was deserted. No old man, no guests, nothing. The police told us the place had been abandoned for years, known for strange disappearances. We couldn't believe it. Who or what had we encountered that night? We made it to the festival, but the trip was overshadowed by that terrifying night. We never took back roads again, and I still get chills thinking about that eye staring at me through the wall. Sometimes the open road holds secrets better left undiscovered. Story 3: The Rest Stop. It was a hot summer day when my girlfriend Lisa and I decided to take a road trip to visit her family in Texas. The drive was long and uneventful, but we were enjoying each other's company and the changing scenery. As the sun began to set, we found ourselves in the middle of nowhere, miles away from the nearest town. "We should find a place to stop for the night," Lisa suggested. "Yeah, there's got to be a rest stop around here somewhere," I replied, keeping my eyes peeled for any signs. After another hour of driving, we finally saw a sign for a rest stop. Relieved, I pulled in and parked. The place was deserted, just a couple of picnic tables, a restroom, and a vending machine. It looked old and neglected, but we were tired and needed a break. We got out to stretch our legs. The air was still and eerily quiet, the only sound the occasional chirping of crickets. Lisa went to use the restroom while I grabbed some snacks from the car. As I waited, I heard a rustling noise coming from the nearby woods. I looked over but didn't see anything. Probably just an animal, I thought. Lisa came back, looking uneasy. "That bathroom is creepy," she said. The lights were flickering, and it felt like someone was watching me. "It's an old rest stop." "What did you expect?" I joked, but her expression didn't change. We sat at one of the picnic tables, eating our snacks. The sky was getting darker, and the rest stop seemed even more isolated. I felt a growing sense of unease, but tried to brush it off. "We should get going soon," I said, standing up to throw away our trash. As I approached the trash can, I saw something that made my blood run cold. There was a message scratched into the paint. "Leave now." "Lisa, look at this," I called out, my voice shaking. She came over and gasped. "What the hell? Who would write that?" "I don't know, but I think we should listen," I said, my heart pounding. We hurried back to the car, but just as I started the engine, the headlights illuminated something in the rearview mirror. A figure was standing at the edge of the woods, watching us. It was too dark to make out any details, but I could feel their eyes on us. "Let's go now," Lisa urged, her voice filled with panic. I floored the gas pedal, speeding out of the rest stop. As we drove away, I kept checking the mirrors, but the figure didn't follow. Still, the sense of dread lingered. We didn't stop again until we reached a motel in the next town. We were both shaken and exhausted. As we checked in, I asked the clerk if they knew anything about that rest stop. "You stopped there?" he asked, looking surprised. "That place has been abandoned for years. Folks around here say it's haunted." "Haunted," Lisa repeated, her face pale. "Yeah, people say they see strange figures and hear voices. Some even say they've seen ghosts," he explained. "Most people avoid it." We thanked him and went to our room, too tired to process what we'd heard. That night, I had trouble sleeping, my mind replaying the events over and over. The next morning, we decided to cut our trip short and head back home. We couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, and the encounter at the rest stop had spooked us both. As we drove past the area where the rest stop had been, I glanced over. There was nothing there, no picnic tables, no restrooms, just an overgrown lot. It was as if the place had never existed. To this day, I can't explain what we saw or why that rest stop appeared to us. All I know is that we experienced something strange and unsettling, and it changed the way we look at road trips forever. Some places are best left unexplored, and some warnings should never be ignored.